One. So in the interest of keeping our high performance virtual office chugging away on time here, I figured I'd get rolling. I talked to Kanchan about doing a talk for the foundation here, and what she said is what'd be great is to talk a little bit about what you're doing to make to get through this kind of COVID slowdown. And so I came up with a talk idea here about building a high performance virtual office, and I'll just dive right into it, and show where we started at Mentor, my company, and how we made the transition. That's what this is all about. And hopefully there's lots of good tips and tricks in here for you that you can apply directly. I will definitely leave some time at the end if we want to have a little bit of a discussion. So definitely feel free to type your questions or ask your questions, whatever works best. This is definitely for you, and I'd like to see love to see a little discussion. If you have any questions along the way too, feel free to interject. All right, so these are the 4 offices that house the team that I lead at Mentor. So we've got the head office here. This is down in Portland, Oregon, and then we've got an office over here in Grenoble, France, and then we've also got our office down here in Fremont. And for those of you that hang around Innovation Place, the one in the bottom left is probably the familiar one. That's where our office is in Saskatoon here. And how we're structured is, for many years we've been working under these bricks and mortar roofs, in a very physical way, and we've gotten quite accustomed at how we work. We do manage to work in between offices, so we've got some projects that are going on between these 4 places. So we have a little bit of collaboration tools in place for remote staff. It's not completely foreign to us, but pretty limited. We do fairly broad strokes in that department, and most of the tight collaboration happens under one of the 4 roofs. And this is our team in Saskatoon, or part of it. So, what happens when you've got everyone under one roof in an office is they develop a certain way of collaborating. If you just look at this simple diagram here, this is actually taken right when this person in the middle here started, and they the 2 people at the back there are kind of in a mentorship mentee kind of relationship for the first 6 months or a year. They can kind of just lean over and help each other with their screens. This guy on the phone over here, other people can hear what they're talking about and get a little bit of awareness of what's going on. So that's really useful stuff. And even just in a meeting setting like this, just the way that people interact and talk, and being able to see their body language, whether they're approving of what you're saying or not. Here I barged in, you could see people notice me for a second and look away, and there's just so many little cues there. Everyone here's wearing a mustache. I don't know if you can see that, but it was Kyle Fisher's 10th anniversary with the company, and he's got a mustache, so we gave everyone else mustaches except for Aaron. He didn't party with us, I guess, on that one. And there's a lot of other stuff that happens. So even just walking by, we've got all these glass offices in our Saskatoon office, and just walking by at a glance, you can see a lot of things. You can see that Anthony Ho over here, who runs, this is our incubator where all the new people start. He's at his desk. He's not actually working directly with other people. He's doing some independent work right now. There's these 2 guys here. They're collaborating. You can tell because this guy doesn't actually have a desk in this office. They must be working on something together. This guy here's got IT problems because this is our IT guy. And the person that's sitting here was here recently because their monitors are still open, and but their desk is empty. So just at a quick glance, as you're walking through the office, you walk through, look through the glass, see what 100 people are doing, you got a pretty good finger on the pulse. And it's really helpful for these kind of pep rally kinds of things too. This is the vice president of our division from California, Ravi, and he came to Saskatoon to announce their acquisition of our company, and got everyone together, and just kind of like feeling that group excitement. That's something that we do a lot of, and we have fun together too. So this is an example. This guy sitting here, he just he did all the work to close a big deal with Apple, and so he decorated his office a little bit. And you kind of do these fun things when you've got physical office. And so there's a lot of things that actually make physical teams work really well. Seeing and hearing what others are doing, all these water cooler type discussions, which I call opportunistic interactions, where you just happen to bump into someone and solve something. Maybe you're having lunch with them. Facial expressions, body language, you can tell how people really feel about what you're talking about. And things like whiteboards. I mean, this is a great tool. They don't work so good virtually. I've never seen any, there's virtual whiteboards. I've never actually seen someone use one as successfully as they do with in-person whiteboards. There's this whole practice that is sometimes encouraged and sometimes discouraged, but it happens all the time, where you just kind of barge in and have a 2-minute discussion with someone. You need something quick, you can just go over there and get it done. You don't schedule a meeting or something. This whole practice of leaning over to help, hey, I got a problem, can you have a look at this? Oh yeah, sure. You just kind of go and jump on their machine and have a peek with them. Having fun, and this whole humanization aspect is really important too. People just treat each other better when they realize that they're people, and they do this more through physical interaction than virtual ones. So what happened is just not too long ago, let me see if I can minimize this thing. There we go. On March 2nd, we started getting this fairly big sign here. You can see COVID in China was starting to flatten, kind of growing elsewhere, and started seeing these signs. And what we decided to do, because it's pretty easy for our office to become a virtual office, we just kind of packed up our stuff, and for the most part, we went home. So this is from that week. This is an all hands meeting. Usually this entire room is jam-packed with people, standing room only, including that area outside back here and over by the kitchen and around the corner and stuff. This is a big meeting with a lot of people. This was all that was left in our office about 4 weeks ago. And then the next team meeting that I had, you can see I'm already starting to dress like a schlub because no one else is here. And I'm starting to look like I haven't showered in a little while and stuff, but it was just kind of like, people were all working from home, and I wanted that experience from the office a little bit. This is the next team meeting that I had just one day later. There's only a few people that attended, so barely anyone there. And, fast forward to now, and this whole situation's become, quite busy and quite prolific, and so it doesn't look like we're going back to work super soon. When you see this plot, we're going to be a little while figuring this out. And so what we wanted to do is, shut down the offices. I think there's like 2 or 3 people working from our Saskatoon office, no one in France, no one in the US. So they just look like this. They're just kind of shut down, and have everyone work from home. And in the process, figure out this, how to take, what happens naturally under these 4 roofs and actually make it work in this really distributed kind of fashion. So we started off with a goal. We said, what we want to do, we don't think we can hit 100% productivity. That would just be unrealistic. If we could hit 100% productivity without offices, we probably just wouldn't have offices. So the goal here was to hit 90% productivity at least. And we wanted to see how to do that, and we wanted to make sure that we're identifying and fixing all of our blockers here. One of the things that I mean, just thinking about this for about 5 seconds, it's kind of like the simplest thing is, if we can find a way just to do the exact same thing we do in a physical office, just virtually, well, then we're going to solve all of our problems. And so that's kind of what we targeted doing, but in a much more targeted way than everything. We want to capture the things that really affected productivity. One of the really good things is we started with a pretty decent toolbox full of tools. So probably the biggest thing that helped us to just pick up and move was, if you kind of think about 4 weeks ago, well, 5 weeks ago, everyone had tasks and they knew exactly what they're doing, and we had great momentum from the past, 15 years, everything going really well. And so what the first thing that had to happen is people needed to be able to, pack up and start their virtual office from home. And in our case, all of our whole data centers down in the States, and people just dial it, not dial in, I'm showing my age here. People just remote log in to their physical computers in the US to do all their development work. And so this was super easy. You just grab your laptop and go home. and plug it into your home network, jump on the VPN, and just go about developing like you always did. There's no file server lag. There's no other problems to solve, really. That part just worked. And so people on day one of working remotely were already plugged in and productive. So that was really cool. And what I think the takeaway is from this is, we saw benefits from this, not having any real equipment, aside from laptops to access other stuff in our office. We saw benefits to it earlier. This was incredible. This was just, amazing that we could just pick up and leave. Our old IT infrastructure that we had, where we had file servers and clusters and stuff in our physical office in Saskatoon, if we had to actually pick up and go home, that would have gone a whole lot worse. And this was just extremely smooth. So, we saved certainly days times 100 people by having this distributed cloud IT kind of setup. So recommend that. Another thing that we make extensive use of is Slack. So this is Slack, our messaging application. This is just my team. This isn't all of Mentor, all of Siemens or something. This 3 million messages is from my team, and 135,000 in 30 days. And so people have been using this heavily. It's not like we had to just go and plug it in and get everyone working on a chat kind of app. People already work this way. And this helped a ton, because a lot of the back and forth already goes through Slack. And you can see here, this is a percentage chart on the y-axis here. Almost all the messages are these red ones. This is 70 to 80% kind of thing of all the messages that are sent are just direct messages. So this is how people actually use Slack. It's direct, person to person or person to small named people, kind of in a group kind of thing, rather than channels. And that's how just about all of our communication already was before the start. You can see this, sort of back March 7th. If you go back, it's, just the same kind of thing. There's a little bit more in terms of message volume, but not a lot. It's kind of continued. So nice tool there. Another piece that was super useful that we use is called Jabber. It's a Cisco product, and it just basically gives you one-click dialing to anyone in your organization. It's got nice screen sharing built in. It's got video conferencing built in, but no one really uses video conferencing in our organization. I mean, there's a few people that do, but not that many people. It's mostly just for the one-click dial and for talking. The other thing that happened is our conference call provider, they got completely overrun by this, and it's still broken. You can't actually dial into it. It takes like 10 tries and then you get in kind of thing. So we actually just dial in through Jabber, and that's properly routed and stuff, and works 100% of the time. So it's good. It's better routing to our conference system too, which helps a lot. The funny thing that I found out, though, is that software developers aren't very good at using phones. These are people that are used to, they have direct conversations with people most of the time, the developers under one roof I'm talking about, or Slack conversations. But you ask them to pick up a phone, and it gets kind of funny, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, but we actually had a lot of trouble getting Jabber set up and working for everybody, not because Jabber was hard, but because people couldn't get their mic or their speaker or something to work. Another thing that's super useful is this picture in the background here. This is Doug Engelbart, and this is a screenshot just from what's called the mother of all demos from 1967. And one of the things that he demonstrated was group collaboration, group text editing in documents, kind of like what we have now in Google Docs. And I just love this suite of products. Like, we've known since 1967 that this is a good idea, and we're finally starting to actually use this heavily in the mainstream, which is really good. So I would really heavily recommend, if you're still making Word and PowerPoint documents on your laptop, it's kind of like a thing of the past, I think, and group collaboration with this stuff, either with the online tools from Office 365 or G Suite or something similar, I think are kind of an essential service these days for any business. So this is something that really helped a ton, and we use it a lot. We also use Jira and Confluence for coordinating all of our projects, coordinating all of our tasks. That was already in place. Started doing a little bit more precise job of it because coordination of people and tasks and projects is that much more important. We use a fair amount of WebEx. So this is just a quick WebEx screenshot. Use a lot of WebEx for sharing screens and presentations and so on. So that's our toolbox that we started with. The other thing that we started with is a lot of momentum. This is a screenshot from a game called Rust, which is a survival game where you start off with a rock and a loincloth on a beach and try to survive. And we weren't in this situation at all. We weren't trying to build a virtual office from zero. We had all this momentum. What we've been doing, this is an end game World of Warcraft guild together. What we've been doing is raiding together for years, the business equivalent to this. And we learned, how to work together, and we knew what each other could do. And we had this incredible momentum, and we'd all leveled up as professionals. And so what we really needed to do is take this momentum and just try to use it to get through this period. So we've got, 2-3 months kind of thing where we're going to have to work without our physical offices, and we need to make this work. So this is really, the way that we looked at it is, let's do what's needed. Let's solve the problems that are needed to hit over 90% and survive. So that's sort of the idea. We started off with a virtual office gap analysis. So we went to this, bang, we were under one roof. We didn't prepare for this. We just, everyone went home, plugged in their laptops and started working. And then we said, well, what's not working? What do we got to go fix? And we made a list here of the things that we thought were going to be real problems. And this is kind of our list here, sort of a summary. People stopped talking. That sucks. When people wanted to meet, they would think they had to schedule meetings. There wasn't this practice of just barging into someone's office or leaning over, and instead people would schedule like a half-hour meeting or an hour-long meeting to have what should have been just a 2-minute phone call or something like that, or a 2-minute discussion. And so for some reason there was this barrier here, and this was actually a huge issue. There was this mutual awareness of what each other is doing when we're working, what we're working on. That's all gone. There's no more water cooler discussions. There's no more people to bump into in the hallway and figure things out opportunistically. It all has to be much, much more deliberate. Accountability, this is actually something, a lot of people work well on their own. A lot of people work extremely well when no one else is looking, and they just kind of do what they need to do. And a lot of people don't, and it doesn't mean they're not useful people. It's a different style of person, and they kind of need the mob feeling, like everyone else is working, so I should too. And some of our best employees actually kind of function that way. And so what we needed to do is make sure that mutual accountability was back in place. There's this whole practice of just leaning over and helping someone, and that essentially stopped. I mean, we didn't have anywhere to lean to. Whiteboard discussions stopped. There was no more solving things quickly and pragmatically on a whiteboard. Assigning, managing tasks, reviewing tasks. This got, this is stuff that would just, happen. People just kind of stop in and do it when they had time, kind of thing. Our management and top leaders would just kind of, they're pretty in demand. So this was more done through opportunistic interactions, I think, in the office, in the physical office. And that just wasn't happening anymore because these are now gone. Individual work habits needed to be rebuilt, because when you're at home, you wake up, and if you just don't happen to leave the house, when do you start working and where do you start working? And so we had to solve those problems not for everyone. Some people just jumped in and figured it out, and some people didn't. And then there's also this having fun together. How do you still socialize and still enjoy your time together as coworkers? So these are the things that I think where the wheels fell off the wagon for us. Great tools, lots of stuff in place. This stuff didn't work. And so the practice here is, take each thing that you do worse than you could do in your physical office and solve it. Figure out, okay, what do we need to do for each one of those things to do good enough to hit 90+% productivity for the next 2 or 3 months. That's the way that we scope this problem. So the stuff that we did and stuff that we fixed, stupid phones. I'm going to talk about why they're stupid some more. This is just a joke, but building new habits, makeshift telepresence. So if you can't just see where people are and what they're doing, how do you become aware of each other? How do you make people accountable and feel accountable and like we're all accountable together without being, subjecting people to this evil dystopian future where there's too much, like time cards and things like that. We didn't want that, but we wanted to rebuild that feeling of group accountability to the goals. Definitely needed more management, and that one's kind of fun, what we did about that. And we needed more meetings. We don't have a meeting culture. We sort of sliding into one a little bit briefly because out of necessity. So I want to talk about stupid phones some more. So software developers are funny creatures. These technical geniuses and very good with devices usually. And for some reason, this device here is not considered to be a telephone. If you ask someone to dial in to a meeting, they're not going to pick up their phone and just dial in. Like, people just didn't do that. They tried to figure out on their laptop what their favorite, open source operating system and their funny codecs that they're using and stuff, how to actually dial into a phone call. And like, mics and speakers didn't work. Everything was broken for the first like 3 or 4 meetings. And so we actually had to, get everyone, first of all, like, it's like step one, get connected. I did this escape room a little while ago, group escape room. We broke into 2 groups to start with. And then the first step was to get the 2 groups connected with a wall between us and reestablish connection. That was actually like step 1 of building a virtual office too, is like reestablish connectivity with the hive, and it actually took a surprisingly long time and amount of fiddling to do that correctly. But it works now, like people, their phones work. And this was actually like the silly thing that I didn't expect, is that making phones work was just going to be this hard. We made it everyone's first task. If your phone doesn't work, if your microphone, if your speakers, whatever it is, don't work, your first job is to go make those work. Don't write code, go make those work, because you need to be able to talk to people. So go do that, go make it really good. And then we had, people, sort of, running around from person to person and helping and making sure that this kind of came back together. So that was kind of funny, stupid phone. Another thing that was interesting, this is Megan Marsh. She's one of the managers on my Saskatoon team. We had to build some new habits, and this just happened yesterday. So we haven't succeeded at this yet, I wouldn't say. But, she's asking me, do you have time for a call? Yeah, sure. When works for you? Now. Like, why don't you just like phone me? When I was a kid, maybe this is me showing my age again, but like, we had phones on the wall, and you just pick up the phone and you just call someone and be like, you didn't have to like ask them if it's okay to call before you call. You just go call them, and if they don't answer, then that's fine. Then they call you back later. And that's what I want. The same kind of protocol that people use when they're thinking, well, I'm just going to go and barge into that guy's office, or I'm going to go up and walk up to that person and talk to them. They're eating lunch and I don't care. I'm just going to go and say hi because I need something done. And and I want that same thing happening with phones. We needed to do that because we were missing that real-time kind of interactive, just grab the phone and call someone kind of thing. People weren't doing that. Something else, like this actually was worse. This is also from yesterday. So again, not solved. And this tells a story of 3 people that all work under one roof in our Grenoble, France office. And there's this blocking issue, really important evaluation blocking issue. There's a guy named Sylvain. He's a manager on my team, really, really good, super pragmatic guy. And he's saying, hey, there's no progress on this thing. I'm like, well, have you talked to the guy that needs to fix it? And he said, well, yeah, I talked to his boss's boss who called his boss, and then there was no answer for him. So we couldn't call the actual guy who needs to. I'm like, can you just phone the guy? And like, they actually work down the hall from each other physically. And if they were in the physical office, Sylvain would have just gone over and said, hey, Xavier, like, can you fix this thing? And he'd be, okay. But instead we're like going up the org chart and down the org chart with phone calls and stuff, which is really weird. So we just need to fix those kinds of things. I talked about telepresence, and one of the things that you can see, you know, in our glass offices in Saskatoon, especially, you see who's sitting there, you see who's working, who's kind of like in that, you know, flow of software development that you don't want to bug, or, you know, in between tasks, perfect time to go and pull them in. You can see that really, really clearly, and that's all missing now. And what we've done to compensate is, this is just a joke on my screen. This is probably a too much telepresence example, but what we've done is people have really started sharing a lot more on Slack about their, you know, what they're doing. Hey, I'm out for 15 minutes to walk my dog, or, you know, whatever people are doing. They just kind of let people know, so their availability is a lot more clear. And so you see a lot more just kind of broadcasting of general availability among the team, and that's helped a lot. It's not perfect. I think there's better ways to do this, but this is probably good for now. Probably what we need to hit our 90% productivity goals. Just, you know, broadcast your availability more via Slack, and people have been doing a good job of that, I think. Non-invasive accountability. This is, I think, second to phones, probably the most important thing that we had to do. And what we did is we said, okay, we don't want this to be like a dystopian company where people have, you know, timesheets and they need to log everything that they do or something. And that's actually not the purpose at all. It's not to police work. It's to make people feel like they're part of the clan and part of the mission, and we gotta get stuff done. And so what we did is we put together this group tracking sheet, and we would never do this in the in-person office because we already know all this stuff in the office. But what this was done is to do is we've got here, you know, every week is a different tab down here. Every day is a different row, and then every column is a different person on the dev team. And what they do is they just put in their hours when they start, and they type in their tasks as they're going throughout the day. And then everyone can see what other people are working on and that they are working. And by updating this in fairly real time, it actually really helps create that mutual awareness that we have in the office, just from you know, seeing people and opportunistic interactions and overhearing stuff in the hallway and stuff like that. You get that back to some degree, and this helped a lot. And then what happens at the end of each day is we don't use email for most internal communication, but we do say, hey, just send an email that says you're done for the day. And this is so that our work life and our home life don't just kind of like become one big mush and you're kind of like half working all the time. We don't think that's healthy. So what we want people to do is send an email when they're done at the end of the day and say what they did. And so all they do is really cut this piece out here, and then they send a single email and they say, here's the hours I worked, and here's the little bullets that I did. And then there's usually like a back and forth the next day about, you know, what you did, et cetera. Management's checking in and following up on all this stuff and making sure people are doing the right things, they're doing the things right, and new tasks are getting started correctly and pointed the right direction, quality's good, all that stuff. We don't have a meeting culture at all. I'm anti-meeting. Meetings are a terrible way to get things done a lot of the time. And so my team's always had like, you know, 1-2 meetings a week is it. So Megan's physical team, keep talking about Megan because I just talked to her yesterday about some of the things she's put in place for ideas for this. But what her physical team used to do is they just meet on Wednesday. So we'd have this one tech team meeting. I actually host this one, and this is one where I do a lot of the yakking, and we get our applications team in there to talk about customers, and we do business updates and really try to tie what R&D is doing to the business. If software developers understand why they're writing software, they do a better job of it, I find. So that's what this meeting's for, is a quick tech team meeting. And then immediately following that, Megan hosted an R&D meeting with 30-second updates from all the team members. Here's what I worked on last week. Here's what I'm doing this week. Any blockers, next person, right? Bang, 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 super fast. And what she had to do in order to compensate for some of the things that are now gone is add some more meetings. So she just kind of has a meeting every Monday morning. It's a short one. And she goes over goals and tasks with everyone. Here's what we need to get done for the week, because that was starting to get lost a little bit. The tech team meeting's been extended. So we talk about more topics. We've doubled the length of that from 15 minutes to 30. She's doubled up she's getting people to do a little bit longer, a little bit more polished individual updates. And she says that's super useful for accountability and also just being able to, tell everyone, hey, here's what I'm doing. Be excited and proud about what you did and share with the team. It's a really good venue for that. On Thursday, one of the pieces that was starting to wane. So Megan in the physical office, she actually shares, is by choice, shares an office with the person that runs our applications team, Jared. And she hears everything that's going on in the field related to her product. So every customer problem, every customer interaction response and stuff, it kind of like runs through her office. So she's got this perfect awareness of what's going on there, and that's gone. So now she's got this customer review meeting that's fairly extensive and important. And then there's also a QA and DevOps team meeting. The reason for that one is because the QA and DevOps team, they kind of do, relative to software tasks, they're doing a lot more smaller scale tasks, and it needs more coordination. So there's quite a bit more that got added in as meetings, and I hate this, and it's a necessary evil, and it's a good way to get through the next 2 or 3 months, and then we're going to go back to a more lightweight management style as soon as we can, or try to solve this better. But this is what's working and what was necessary for now. One of the things we had to do too is just add management overhead. When you're in the office, you get this kind of revolving door at your own door. Anyone that needs you, they just come in and solve things with you, and that's kind of gone now. And you also kind of walk the halls and sort of talk to whoever is available, and not sort of like in deep coding mode. You don't want to interrupt them all the time, but you kind of catch people at the right times and get everything kind of updated and make sure they're working on the right thing and doing the work right and all that stuff. And that's all kind of gone now. So what we have is our managers pulling a lot more. No one's going to push information to you. You have to assume that. You got to just pull more information. And so lots of check-ins, check-in, 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 rinse and repeat. And so the actual management overhead is close to double what it used to be. And the way that we did that is our managers work a lot on biz dev, and they work a lot on more than just administrative management of the team, or do a lot of leadership normally. And we just kind of taken away from that stuff, and that sucks. We want those people to be able to do those things, but it's kind of a necessary evil for now. And if we were in this mode more persistently, we'd add more managers, because I think you just need more management overhead to run a distributed team. But we're just kind of giving up some of the other stuff for now and working longer hours, and I think it works pretty well. There's one guy on our team that's in a previous life, he worked from home exclusively, and he had some tips for people. Get dressed and shower for work, just like you're going to see people out in the real world. Set boundaries between work and play. Try to have a separate workspace. Use video chat. He's actually like the only guy I typically video chat with, but most people don't. And I find every time I do it, it kind of renews that personal relationship that we have, and it's a good thing, and we should get used to that. But I think for some reason, well, I think we know the reasons, but a lot of people just don't really like doing video conversations from home, probably because they didn't do the stuff that's above. They don't have a nice workspace, and they didn't shower yet and stuff like that. And but if you do all this stuff, then you can have video chats too. And then he's got these 2 tips that I think work in general. Don't eat at your desk and try to exercise. I think those are good tips for in the office too. Just a quick overview of how this all played out and how it worked. About a quarter of my team had trouble getting set up. So the good news here is 3/4 just kind of plugged in, figured things out, started working pretty efficiently, got stuff done. The other quarter of the team didn't do so well. They had trouble getting set up. There was lots of issues. It took about 2 weeks to sort through them all. There was a stack of things. And then week 3 was pretty smooth. So I'd say, in terms of the productivity goal, we were a little sub 90 at first. We're probably about 80% productive. And now I think we're close to 100 actually, which is pretty cool. I didn't expect it to be that good, but it's turned out really well, and it's just because we went and solved problems. The proof for me is always in the pudding. If the releases are good, the quality's good, everything's on time, all the features that are planned are good, awesome. We just 4 weeks in a row hit every single release deadline. hit every customer issue. Things are going extremely well in terms of actually releasing product. And the other thing for me is that business is still good. You know, our customers are happy. Our support, I think, is still good. Got an interesting thing I'm going to bring up here at the end here, but I think the business is still extremely good. We just had our record quarter, you know, 1 month of which was spent working from home. And so we didn't miss a beat yet, and hit 418% of our revenue plan, which was, you know, kind of insane for a mature organization. It's kind of knocked it out of the park, even though we were working from home for a third of the time and trying to work that way. We had quite a few early complaints from people about new reporting, more reporting, and more meetings. And it was kind of a matter of building habits and expectations, and people saying, oh, this isn't bad. Yeah. I thought this was going to be worse, but it's actually just fine, and I see why we need it. So that's sort of what's transpired over, you know, just a couple of weeks. We had one person that said, you know, I just can't start working in isolation. If I'm at home, I'm not going to start working, and I don't know what to do. And that ended up getting solved by setting up a video call with a coworker, where they just kind of join in the morning, set up a video call, say hi, get to work. You know, the keyboards click, and they feel like they're just kind of in a shared office now. And I think that solved the problem. Some people said, you know, I'm having trouble getting motivated to start, you know, this afternoon. I'm just going to take a half day off. And we were worried about that initially, because if this was a trend that people couldn't work from home and kept taking vacation, well, that's not really what we wanted. But it didn't really turn out that way. You know, people kind of took their half day and then got back to work and felt productive after and stuff. The extra management overhead sort of sucks. It's longer hours and getting less of the other good stuff done for our managers, but it's just for 2 or 3 months, so you kind of suck it up and survive. And one of the biggest things that everyone needs to change their expectation of is that other people are going to tell them everything they need to know. You can't you can't expect push notifications from people. You can try, but it's usually fairly disappointing. And it's way better to just get in the habit of seeking out your own updates and stuff from people. And I find that expectation is really important, much more important now that we're in a virtual office kind of situation. A couple of benefits, you know, everyone can work from home now. We had one team actually down in Wilsonville, probably the Fremont team too. Our France team, actually, all three of those said they've done quite a bit of this before and kind of had it figured out to some degree. Saskatoon team, not so much. And now everyone can work from home, and developers learn to use phones. And this actually matters, because I have this dream, and I don't know if this is actually going to play out, but of a developer, instead of like getting up and walking over to the other side of the office, actually like phoning someone to answer a question, because it's faster. So we'll see if that actually plays out, but that actually might be a nice little productivity win out of this whole thing. A few things that are still broken. One of the things, we're celebrating our overall productivity, but if you look at what's going on under the hood, our top staff are the most productive. They're more productive than they usually are. And that's because no one's coming to them and saying, hey, can you help me with this? Can you answer that question? And that's part of their job, is to act as a multiplier on others. And right now they're not working as a multiplier on others. They're more productive as independent contributors. But as a growing organization, this is a death sentence to growth, because you need to hire new people, you need to invest in those new people, you need to ramp them up, and your senior staff needs to be the people that does this. And so what's actually happened is our ramping staff is less productive, and this is really bad. And we need to get those people working much more closely together. Maybe we'll get through the 2-3 months and just kind of suck it up, but and celebrate the overall productivity that we've got. But ultimately, this is not a recipe for scaling that we have right now. It's a recipe for partial stagnation, and maybe it's okay because it's just 2 or 3 months, and maybe it's not. We're still figuring that out. Management's really busy. We've still got people that don't just pick up the phones. Like those two of those examples that I gave about people not just picking up the phone and, you know, wanting to kind of schedule and making it okay to have a call kind of thing. That was just from yesterday. So, and these are managers too. So like, I don't think the team is sorted this out yet. We haven't built those new habits, and we have to get people used to just kind of doing the virtual equivalent of barging in and asking a question from time to time when they need it. And the weirdest one for me is this last one, that field team requests are down to a third. So our R&D team is telling me, well, just no one's asking me for stuff. I'm like, what's going on? Like, are there fewer problems that need help? Are people solving them more on their own? Are they sitting there not getting solved? So this is something that I'm going to dig into. Just kind of dug this up yesterday, and I don't know why that is yet, but definitely a sign that something's wrong. So there's still some things that we're fixing, but I'd say like we fixed most of the problems that we need to be super productive remotely, and just kind of shared some of the lessons there. Another thing that we can't solve, this is my opening slide too, cats are evil. This is Luke, which is one of our software developers' cats. And funny story here is people are saying, like, can't hear you. You're kind of muffled. And she's like, people can hear me all the time. I don't know what you're talking about. She looks down, her cat's laying on the microphone. And we've got like a lot of people sharing pictures of like cats on the keyboards, cats, in front of the monitors. And we don't have a cat solution yet. Just in general, there's lots of little things that distract people at home. And you kind of embrace them and expect them. And maybe that's the part that we hope to lose, is these things that are endearing to people in their home type settings. So that's my talk on what we went through and how we became 90% plus productive with our temporary virtual office. I'd like to open it up to any discussion or questions. It's all fair game. Glad to help out with anything. Also, if you've got additional questions or things you think of later, just feel free to shoot me an email. I'm always happy to hear from people and help out. So definitely don't hesitate to shoot me an email or text message or something. Any questions on the line here? I'm seeing some coming in here on the chat box. Let's see. Is there a benefit to Slack if the company is currently using Microsoft Teams? That's a really good question. I would say Slack and Teams are pretty much, by design, feature for feature equivalent. People use Slack and Teams to solve the exact same problem. If you really get down into like the low level kind of details, sure, there's probably some advantages. The one thing that I like way better about Slack or about Teams than I do about Slack is it integrates better beyond the organization. So if I want to invite a customer to a meeting, just a lot easier to do, I think. It's more for that, I would say. And but aside from that, they're pretty much conceptually equal. We're actually using Slack right now and moving to Teams over the next probably 3 or 6 months. Not because Teams is better, but just that's what the big company bought for us, and we don't really care. We've evaluated Teams and we decided it would be a good enough or equivalent replacement. So that's kind of good. Next question here I've got, actually any on the line, anyone that someone wants to ask with a real live voice? All right, I got another one here from Lindsay Fuchs. How are you measuring productivity and the management overhead? So that's a really good question. Like, I'm not looking at lines of code contributed. We do look at stuff like that because that's just one of the fingers on the pulse. But ultimately, what I look at is, and this is sort of like extrapolating from 25 years of experience. I look at what's getting burned down in terms of tasks. So we know what we're aiming to get done for a given release within a given period. Then we see what we actually get done, and it looks really, really on par with the same overall pace that we had in the office, which is really cool. The other thing too that we do is a lot of just through all those management check-ins, we check where people are at on their tasks. We like to see progress. We don't measure progress based on what people say. We measure progress on what we see getting actually done and built and delivered. And so we see this on a daily basis just by watching the rate at which tasks are burning down. And the management team that I've got is really good at just kind of assessing pace and stuff too. So it's kind of like a historic knowledge of pace, and then seeing how we're doing relative to that as probably the main thing. Looking for what's actually built and done as opposed to other secondary metrics. There are other things we do, but that's the main one. I'll do one more here from, so Andrew Bergman. Hey, Andrew, how you doing? Uh, uh, have you had to address many staff morale issues? Any suggestions for managers of employees who are having trouble coping with broader issues? So I'm going to interpret this as being specific to working from home, because there's always, there's a long list of things that we address, just but things specific to working from home. I think the biggest thing is that not everyone's actually well set up for working remotely. If you look at my house, it's really easy. It's like I live here with my wife and my fish back here, and I don't have any kids, and I don't have any other pets, and I don't have any other distractions, and I can wake up in the morning and I can get straight to work. And my wife and I kind of negotiate for position. Hey, do you want this room now? Okay, it's my turn in this room. You go to the other room. We kind of like bounce around a little bit, but it's really, really easy. The people that have trouble, I mean, I can't imagine doing this with like 4 young kids running around that are used to their parents being available. Like if you're home, it's playtime, and it's like you're home and you're not playing with me. What's going on? And having to build those new boundaries, probably the hardest thing. And people are kind of doing a good job of solving that on their own. We're helping with tips and tricks and helping people with solving those things. But I think they're the ones that are having the most trouble, is the people that just aren't set up to work from home and have young families. One guy on my team, he said, he just reported one day in our updates, he said, you know what I did is I discovered I have a lock on my bedroom door. So I set up shop in my bedroom door, and my beautiful daughter kept coming in and she wanted to hang out. That's great. I just locked the door and stopped answering it. And then the new pattern built itself. So there's little tips and tricks that people come up with, but that's actually the single biggest issue that we've had due to becoming distributed. 2 cases of cabin fever, I think, that are developing, but nothing that's that I would chalk up to be a notable morale issue because of this. Yeah. Any questions from people with microphones? Yeah, so here's a really good question. This is from Monica, and what she said is do you see a new normal when you go back to the physical office? And I kind of do. Like the developers know how to use phones. Actually, like something that I care about. The newest normal, though, is I want people to think of working from home as a genuine option. I've always worried about people. This is me, I think, personally. I've always worried that people don't do great work from home, and I know some people that have had trouble getting started and getting going. And now that we know how to get started, we know how to manage people that are from home, working from home. I want to encourage people, if you've got any cold, it doesn't have to be like COVID or hiding from COVID. If you've got a cold, or if you've got a delivery, or you've got something else happening, we let people work from home already, but I want to encourage a little bit more and say, that's okay. It's not just something that you can do occasionally if you have to, but encouraged and you're welcome to do it more often. So that's part of, I think, the new normal. And one of the things that I'm really looking forward to getting back to the office for is so that we can get rid of some of the administrative overhead and management overhead and stuff. So I don't think it's going to be a drastic new normal. I think there's just going to be a little bit more working from home, and developers will now use phones, and everything else will kind of go on like it used to. That's what I'm expecting. Christian asked if we're going to have a virtual Pi o'clock. I think that's a great idea. I'm starting to see some of these virtual social events, and there's some people are actually doing that in our office. They're just kind of like cracking a beer together on Friday and kicking back and taking like screenshots and having little visits and stuff, and hosting like little music listening events and stuff like that. So we've seen it within our team. We haven't done one that's in the broader community. There hasn't been anything formal either. It just kind of is what it is. But yeah, I think we should probably do that. I'm going to suggest that to our admin and see if she can actually put one together. I think it'd be cute and fun, and it's kind of just a bring your own to your house kind of beer event or whatever, and but have a visit and get together as a group. I don't know how to administer that yet. You can't just get like 100 people into a voice conference, because it'd be like all sitting at the same small table virtually, and you wouldn't be able to have a conversation. But it'd be fun to have kind of a broader event where we figure out how to actually have a number of conversations. Discord server maybe, if there's any gamers here. Got another one here, Cerise. Hey, Cerise. What do you think about people wanting to work different hours, for instance, the night owls? I love it when people work when they're productive. There's a certain amount of overlap you need in a collaborative team. And so if everyone's just kind of working different hours, it's a little tricky. This is a problem that we're used to, because we have customers all over the world in every time zone there is. And we also have a team in France that we collaborate with closely. And we've got QA in Cairo, Egypt, and we've got people we collaborate with in our company in India pretty closely, and some other places too. And so we're pretty good at being flexible, I think. But what I like is for the core group to have a lot of overlap in their day. So whole free for all, work anytime you want, as long as it adds up to 40 hours or something, I don't really like. Because I do think that there has to be kind of more planned overlap between people. But I like for people to be a little flexible too. So just kind of balance it. In general, we're kind of a 9 to 5 shop in terms of core hours, and then people kind of juggle that to work with their schedules and what they're doing. So there is flexibility, and I'm okay with that. But I think overlap's an important part of collaboration, both in person and virtually. So I think that's the list of stuff that came in through chat. Anything else that any other questions or any other discussion points anyone wanted to bring up, either verbally or through chat here? Good coffee at home too. That's something I like with the virtual office. All right, well, with that, I will wrap up. Thanks very much for attending. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to the group here. Really appreciate it.